Now, having asked the key questions, asking situational questions and getting great information, maybe you've registered certain problems or heard certain problems that the customers mentioned that you know your product or service can solve, and something that maybe you can do better just in general. Well, that's great. But again, resist the temptation to try to say, hey, we can do better than that. Resist the temptation. You want to wait till you get to this phase, which is the presentation phase. You've exhausted your questions. You've gotten to a point with the customer where you've gotten enough information. You really understand their situation and some of the problems that they're having. You got a good grasp. Now is the time to do the presentation. Now, getting ready for the presentation, mentally you have to say, kind of think about two things going on now in your head. Have two things going on. The first one is, now that you've heard some of the problems, you have to incorporate some of those issues into your presentation. So in other words, if the customer is having specific problems with their current product or vendor, what you want to make sure is that as you go through your presentation, that you're answering mentally, ticking off those key problems and how you can do better or how you could solve those problems. Also, incorporate into that also are anticipated objections. Now, customers usually have objections. They're going to have objections. What I want you to do is incorporate what I call blocking objections into your presentation. A blocking objection is basically before the customer raises the objection, you go ahead and answer that question. For example, pricing is always a big price objection. So instead of trying to hide it or waiting to the end and mention it and just drop it on them, maybe say something like this. Now, Mr. Customer, I just want to be upfront and let you know that our prices are typically higher than our competitors. And there's a reason for that, and I want to explain it to you. And then you go right back into your presentation. See what I just did? I raised the presentation, therefore I maintain control of that objection. And by raising it, I said, well, let me go explain why. Now, if we wait for the customer to raise the objection, he may or may not raise the objection. That's one issue. But if they do raise the objection, you may not be ready to answer it, or you may sound defensive. By you taking the initiative, raising the objection in the presentation yourself, the customer says, wow, I'm glad they brought it up because I was going to ask anyway. This means that you're in tune with your customer. If there's a problem that they're having you know you can solve, you say something like this. You know, earlier we talked, Mr. Customer, about this situation and you mentioned this problem. Well, I want to show you how our product or service can actually solve that problem for you. Let me walk you through it. Again, incorporate the found problems and also anticipated objection, and you have a winning combination for a great presentation. So what I'd like you to do right now is think of problems that your customers might mention that you can solve. Just kind of list them out. Okay? Then on another list, just kind of create anticipated objections. Objections you know they're going to raise, okay? And you get these consistently. You get these objections consistently. You know they're going to be raised, so let's not wait for them to raise them. We're going to raise them ourselves and resolve them ourselves when we do our presentation. So pull it all together. In preparing for your presentation, list out the found problems, or typically problems that you know your customer is going to have or complaints they're going to have about the other competitor or other product. And then incorporate that, how you will answer that into your presentation. Then list out all the anticipated objections. And then in your presentation, incorporate where you would raise those objections yourself and then how you would answer them as you're talking to the customer. Again, whether it's across the table, one-on-one, or one-to-many when you're doing a presentation. By understanding their problems, by anticipating their objections, they're going to start looking at you like that person really understands what we need and maybe we should buy from them. See, at that point, you know you've created a great presentation. So again, go ahead and list out anticipated problems that your customer may have, but also anticipated objections that you may get, and begin to say, how would I answer these in a presentation? Go ahead and do that right now.